Hey guys, I'm confident that this is going to be the best possible platformer to be made in GameMaker. It relies on the use of delta time to create a very accurate collision system and movement that feels very responsive. As you can see, for me, it is running at 3450 FPS. This is pretty good. To begin with, I'm going to create a room with an unlimited frame rate of 999 processing ticks per second. Next, I'm going to create an object and call it OBJ player, and another one for the collision, which is called solid. OBJ solid is going to be apparent to everything that you want the player to collide with. I'm going to actually need to create another object called OBJ wall with its parent set to solid. Now, I'm going to create a quick sprite for the player, which is just 32 by 32 in green. I'm going to center this, and I'm also going to duplicate the sprite to make a wall sprite. I'll make sure this isn't centered. Next, I'm going to set the sprites relative to the object. Now, I'm going to create another object. This one's going to be the control object, which is persistent throughout the entire game, and allows us to have variables that every other object can access. In the create event, I'm going to establish a new variable called delta, and this is going to be equal to delta time divided by 1 followed by 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The delta time function, it gives us the microseconds between every step, and by dividing it by this number, it gives us more control over the scale that the game operates at. For me, I find that the best scale to use is 60. What the scale does is that instead of having abnormally large numbers, and considering we're using the microseconds between steps, all the velocities that the player has is going to be now speed over time, and every acceleration is going to be speed over time over time. I like to use the scale 60 as it gives me a better reference to amount variables to. This is going to be put into the begin step event. And we're also going to use the time scale. Now under OBJ player, we want to establish a few variables. The first one is v-speed, and this is going to equate how many pixels vertically over time should the player move. This is the same for the horizontal speed. Next is the vertical acceleration. This is going to represent how quickly should the speed change over time, and this is going to be set to 0. What vertical acceleration is best used for is gravity, as the player will move quicker over time. Next, in the step event, we're going to establish a temporary variable called time, which is going to be equal to OBJ controls delta. This means whenever we need to get the time elapsed between steps, we can just call back time, which would actually equate to obj control.delta. Obj control is the object that holds the delta variable. Now we want the object to experience gravity. To do that, we'll need the vertical acceleration to be equal to 0.8 times time. We also want the player to be able to move left and right. It's going to accelerate. We're using the horizontal acceleration variable, and we're going to equal this to the keyboard checks of the left and right movement. A keyboard check. The positive variable is right, so therefore I'm going to use VK right. We're going to subtract the left key press so that it's a negative direction for the horizontal acceleration. We're going to multiply this by the speed that we want the player to move at. I like to use 0.8 times time. Now we want the player to collide horizontally. What we're going to do is we're going to create a temporary variable called moveX, and it's going to be equal to the horizontal speed plus the horizontal acceleration over 2. And we're going to multiply this by time. Now, if this position's free, then we want to move to it. Here's what I need to type. And the collision object is the OBJ solid parent. Since it's free, then we want the player to move there. But otherwise, if there is an object, then we want to move in that direction until we reach it. To do this, we want the player to stop. Next, we want to move in the direction that it was going, so we're going to create another temporary variable, and we're going to repeat it until we reach the solid. This is equal to sign move x. Now we want to repeat how big the move x was. This is why we use the abs function. The abs function turns negative numbers positive. This means it's always going to repeat the amount of distance it needs to. Now if the position is free 1 pixel to the direction that it was going, then it would move there. We're going to move 1 pixel in that direction until we reach a solid. Now we also want to do this with a vertical. So the best thing for me to do is to copy and paste it and replace all the variables with the vertical axis. So what I'm doing is I'm changing x's to y's and putting them in the y position of place meeting. I'm changing the horizontal speeds and the horizontal accelerations into verticals. Now, the collision is done for the player. Next, we want the speed variables to be influenced by its acceleration. To do this, the vertical speed is going to be equal to itself plus vertical acceleration, and the same is going to happen for its horizontal speed. Next, we want the vertical speed to be multiplied with the power of how quickly it should slow down over time, with time. We have to use the power function, as the more time that is elapsed, the slower it should be. After the collisions, you would like the player to be able to jump. So what you need to type is if the keyboard is being pressed for the up arrow, and there is a solid block below him, so I'm using x, y plus 1 to represent 1 below him, obj solid parent. Then we want the vertical speed to be equal to -12, then a negative number representing vertical movement. Okay, we're done with the player object. Now let's create a room. First thing is you want to make sure that your OBJ controller is in the room. Then you want to put your player and some wall for him to collide with. This is going to be at the bottom of the screen because it's going to be falling and somewhere else. To have the frame rate the game is running at in the room, what you need to do is you go to the control object and under the draw event, we'll put in a piece of code that says draw text in the top left corner for FPS. Now when we play our game, it's going to show us how well this game performs. As you can see, for me, it is running at 3450 FPS. This is pretty good. Thanks for watching my tutorial. You can do a lot with this. I guarantee it's going to work very well for you, as it has done for me. Let me show you. This is another project that I've been working on, and it's using the Delta Time platformer example as its core gameplay. It begins with your player having a very cool hat, and whenever you click the box you get a new one. Each hat has got a special effect, which works with the advanced collision that we've just created. Here's how the game plays out. As you can see, the movement is very accurate and very responsive. My game's currently running at 2000 FPS. Here you can see I'm modifying the scale variable under the Delta Time object. This means I can slow the game to exactly half speed. Thanks.